Hi, I'm Mallory Fries, and I'm a BFA acting student here at UNCG. And for fall 2020, I am taking a college writing course where one of our main focuses is Rhetoric and Activism Speaker Series. For this week, I will be commenting on our most recent writer, Jabar Boykin, and his collection of published poems from his new book, Whatever Happened to Black Boys. One of his biggest inspirations that Boykin spoke about when talking to us and discussing with us about his collection of poems and his activism in general is the kissing case in 1950s North Carolina, where two black boys kissed a white girl, and the white girl's parents found out about it, proceeded to report this incident to the police, and the police then arrested and imprisoned these two black boys just for kissing a white girl. This is incredibly timely, having just came out of the Black Lives Matter movement that is still ongoing, and all of the racial injustice that is currently going on in our nations with systemic racism and with white privilege in general. Looking at his poetry as a whole, it's really interesting that the whole theme is about racial injustice, and that he's taking both perspectives that are fictionalized and based on real events, either from himself or people that Boykin knows, and writing his poetry based on that. And it allows the audience to become more connected to the work. It increases the pathos as well as the elevated logos of his text and his ethos as a poet and person. His two poems that I looked at were titled Whatever Happened to My Father, or Here's What Happened to My Father, excuse me, and Mud. Both of these poems speak about the allusion to slavery and the journey that African Americans and black people have had on their way from slavery, from the emancipation, to their lives currently as free people, and looking at the stark differences in tone these two poems have. Here's What Happened to My Father speaks on the narrator's father and his journey to curiosity in going through the South and finding the beast, which is a anthropomorphism or personification for white supremacists or slave owners. It speaks about picking cotton and cutting tobacco, which is a clear reference to slave beginnings, and the biggest tone difference I found was in the quote, "His curiosity sent him looking for the monster," which is very different from his poem Mud, which is still thematically about slavery, but it looks differently at it, and it mentions the harsh times and the troubles and the injustice that black people face in America today, and how that is a warrant for people to kind of give up, to especially since this has been happening for generations upon generations. It has become tiresome, and that can be seen with the quote, "Today my cousin wants to lounge in the mud being all the negativity, all of the weathering, all of the discrimination that they've been facing," and he puts his cap back and goes outside. He goes back into the weather. He goes back into the world that hates them, or sees them as unworthy or unequal. And looking at these two poems and the rest of the book as a whole being about racial injustice, it clearly speaks to an audience, and it brings up memories. Maybe not shared collective memories, but it definitely will hit a personal experience. For me, looking at these poems, I'm, a white female. I have privilege. I do not have to face the same type of injustice that African Americans or black people do. But one of the things that Boykin spoke about was relating his poetry back to folk tales and fairy tales. And one of the instances that examples that he spoke about was Beauty and the Beast. And I've read Beauty and the Beast. I grew up with fairy tales. I grew up with that folklore and whatnot. And so that would definitely bring up memories for me. And it definitely strikes a toward. It definitely wakes an audience up to the injustice that Black people are experiencing in today's society. And it's, like I said, it's incredibly timely with the Black Lives Matter movement and the protests that went on during summer 2020, and how that has continued on to the different perspectives that are occurring now, and the continuance of that Black Lives Matter movement. It's incredibly timely. I definitely think that poetry is a form of activism. The only thing that makes me question how good of a form of activism poetry is that I know a lot of people that don't read poetry. I know a lot of people that don't read just novels in general. They don't have time to, they don't set that as a priority. And if they were to read, their chosen medium or literary books to read would not be poetry. So I don't know how many people would open up or be enticed enough to open up and read poetry from a book that is talking about such topics. But it is definitely a form of activism. It uses rhetoric, as I've said before, with the allusions to slavery, with imagery, with personification. It is a beautiful literary piece of artwork. It uses rhetoric, and it shares opinions and perspectives, and it helps to change the opinions and perspectives of other people. This text definitely raised questions for me. Some of the questions that I thought of was, why has intolerance persisted for this long in America, in our nation, in our society? And how do we go about combating it? You know, what are the steps that we need to do as a nation, as a people, as an individual to help, you know, this process or this systemic racism and intolerance be stopped? Also, how do we right our wrongs for our past? What are the things that we need to do as a society to right these wrongs and apologize? And how do we go into the future providing better outlooks, better safe spaces, and true equality for generations to come so that this injustice stops? And these are big questions that are not easily answered, and I understand that. But it definitely raised them for me, and it raised similar questions to the Black Lives Matter movement did for me. And overall, my thoughts, this poetry and the themes that it discusses and the different stories and perspectives that it discusses need to be talked about. It is incredibly important to hear about the injustice, the experiences of different people in different walks of life. And I think that with Boykin writing such poetry with different perspectives, with combining different outlooks, and putting his own experiences in, with also different forms of poetry, being sonnets, prose, sestinas, etc., it will attract a wider range of people, and that is necessary. That needs to happen for change to happen, for these different perspectives to get out. And it was a really beautiful thing to sit and listen to Boykin and his and read his different poetry. That's clearly activism. Thank you.